Okay, Wildcats. Today we're looking at Thursday, January 17th, solving quadratic with quadratic formula part 1, and that's on page 38. Now, if you notice that I've changed the table of contents here, this used to say factoring, now it says quadratic formula part 1 and part 2, and there's no notes here on page 39. It's just an assignment day, so if you can just kind of make those changes. All right, now you've made those changes. If you would, let's look at our notes and examples. All right, so solving quadratic equations with the quadratic formula. Well, first off, let's write what the quadratic formula is. The quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, so we're going to use that formula to solve the quadratic equations in example 1, 2, and 3. Now, notice that the quadratic formula has a, b, and c, so we need to find out what those are. So what you might write is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So you can notice that it's a little blurry, and let's brighten it up, that here's your a value, b value, c value. Now, if there's not a number in front of the x, put a 1. So the first thing you want to do is identify what a, b, and c are. So a is 1. Okay, now once you've identified what a, b, and c are, you plug those numbers into the formula. So x equals negative b, so that's negative 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's 2 squared minus 4 times the a value is 1, and the c value is negative 15. All divided by 2 times 1. Now, before you move on, you want to find the discriminant. The discriminant is what's underneath the square root. So b squared minus 4ac. Okay, now, so let's look at that. So the d value is 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 15. And let's put that in the calculator. So I'm going to go to on, new document, no, add calculator. So 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 15 is 64. So the discriminant is 64. Now, which we know is greater than 0. So when the discriminant is greater than 0, we know that there are two real solutions. All right, so then we have x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 64, because we just found that number, divided by 2. Okay, so we continue to simplify. So that is negative 2 plus or minus, the square root of 64 is 8 divided by 2. Now, because we have a plus or minus, we have two answers. So we have x equals negative 2 plus 8 divided by 2, which negative 2 plus 8 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay, so there's one of our answers, x equals 3. Now, but we know there's two real solutions. So x equals -2 minus 8 divided by 2. So -2 minus 8 is -10, divided by 2 is -5. So your two solutions are x equals 3 and x equals -5. All right, let's take a look at example 2. Now, if there's not a number in front of x, put a 1. Then you identify the a, b, and c value. Okay? So a equals 1, b equals 8, and c equals 16. At that point, you plug the numbers into the quadratic formula. So x equals -b, so that's -8, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's 8 squared minus 4 times the a value, which is 1, times c, which is 16. All divided by 2 times 1. Now, before we move on, we need to find the discriminant. So the discriminant in this case is d equals 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16. So we can plug that into our calculator. So 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16 is 0. So d equals 0. Now, when d equals 0, the discriminant equals 0, then we know there's one real solution. So now let's work to find that solution. So x equals -8 plus or minus the square root of 0, because we just found that value, divided by 2. Well, that becomes -8 plus or minus 0 divided by 2. So you have x equals -8 plus 0 divided by 2, which -8 divided by 2 is -4. And x equals -8 minus 0 divided by 2, which again equals -4. So you can see there's one real solution, but because we got the same number twice, we call that x equals -4, and we say it's multiplicity 2. All right, let's take a look at example 3. All right, so example 3. So first thing first, put a 1 in front of the x squared. And so then a equals 1, b equals 10, c equals 27. Now we substitute those numbers into the quadratic formula. So x equals -b, so -10, plus or minus the square root of 10 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, c is 27, divided by 2 times a value, which is 1. All right, at this point we find the discriminant. So d equals 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 27. So we can plug that into our calculator. So 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 27 is negative 8. Now in this case, the discriminant is equal to negative 8, which is less than 0. Now, when the discriminant is less than 0, we know that there are no real solutions. Okay? So we have x equals negative 10 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 divided by 2. Now we need to address the square root of a negative number, okay? So an imaginary number is the square root of negative 1, okay? So in essence, the square root of negative 8 becomes negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 8i divided by 2. So our answer is x equals, now we can divide negative 10 by 2, so that's negative 5 plus or minus 1/2 square roots of 8i, which we call a complex solution. A complex number is a plus or minus bi, where this is the a, this is the b. All right? So if you would, start working on your assignment and have a wonderful Wildcat day.